Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Brother's Son Season 1, Episode 5. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode. Let's start off with Charles' side of things. Obviously, he wakes up in Alexis's apartment or place, which I was surprised by. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Because I thought, once again, I ran through it last episode thinking like, oh, he'd be arrested and Alexis there trying to be offering hand. You know, like, oh, like, you're in a lot of trouble. I can be the person to help you. And then maybe it turns into a legal situation. But that's even removed from the board because Alexis took him back to her house without telling anyone. Or at least we believe that to be the case. It's unclear, especially with everything that goes down later on in the episode. But she's still trying to like, hey, let me into your world. I can help you. But obviously it's like, no, not working with cops, not working with anyone related to cops. The triads have their code for a reason. So he needs his phone, and it's like, right, if you don't get me my phone, it can blow up your life and your career, because lo and behold, whose text messages are at the top of my phone? None other than you, so it could blow back on you. So it's like you can see the intimacy's there. Like, it's just both of them are kind of fighting it a little bit. I think Charles is fighting it a little bit more than anything, because his presence is like, what takes top priority right now is making sure my family's okay. I need a charger not only does he get his phone back finally, but it's also an older phone, so it needs a very specific charger, which is that's a sucky thing. But I mean, like, that's the downside of having like a low-key burner phone where it's like less trackable and stuff like that. But while she was away, he ends up unboxing stuff. He ends up like fixing stuff up in her place, ends up cooking her and baking stuff for her. Because the moment he was like, she was trying to cook for him and she didn't know, like, she doesn't really cook, I was like, well, he's going to, because we obviously know a thing about him is that he likes to cook and he's very good at it. It was actually really sad when he broke it down, talking about how it happened. Basically, he took a fall, I guess it was during one of his jobs or whatever, and he's like, yeah, my dad didn't talk to me like, he said 6 words to me the entire time I was healing, because I think it's just because maybe in his mind it's like, maybe the whole reason is his dad was disappointed. It's like, I can't believe, because your job is to do this and you're useless now, no one can. So like his whole existence is defined by doing the job, being what he represents for the Jade Triad, and not being able to do that job means in that moment. And it's even something Blood Boots had said previously last episode to Bruce, like, he'll be like, if you're able to like be there and support him and benefit him, then like, you know, their father will be all about it. But if you're someone in the way, then you're a problem. So that's the thing. Charles became a problem because it's like, you're just in the way. Like, you like getting injured is a hindrance to expanding our operations, yada yada, so on and so forth. But in that time frame, an auntie kind of like took him to the kitchen and taught him how to cook, and for him that's like some of the happiest times in his life, you know. And even Alexis saying like, oh, she was like a mother to you. It's like, yeah, growing up most of his life without his mom, like, of course, like he was looking for that, because all he had was his father and being what his father wanted him to be. He didn't have that balance in his life because this consumed his life. This is all he ever was. And like I said, that leads to the content he kind of has for Bruce, because he's like, Bruce has it on easy mode. You live this life. You have this soft life. Like, mom looks at you and only you. You're the most important thing to her, not me, even though we're both her children. Parents aren't supposed to have favorites. That's fine, but at least show me a monochrome of the affection you show Bruce. You know, aren't I at least owed that? All the sacrifices that even you admit and recognize the sacrifices I've made for this family, but it just feels like it's not good enough, you know? And it just leaves him barren and hollow that this has been his job. And he's been fine with it for so long, but I think seeing his mom again and just seeing Bruce is what really made him realize just how empty he is. And it's got an interesting parallel between him and Alexis, which they finally shack up and hook up. And I was like, oh, it's probably happening it's definitely happening at the worst time with everything that's happening on the other side of the episode. For you to be up here kind of getting lucky, it's just kind of like, ugh. But ultimately, it didn't last, and kind of no surprise considering we're on opposite sides of the law in this situation. Like, of course, it was never going to work out, but he calls her out for being a honeypot because he's like, oh, you're trying to trick me. You're like, you want to work together and stuff like that. Like, bring me into your worship. He's like, right. Is that why you slept with me? And she's like, oh, like, fuck you for even, like, suggesting that, you know? Because it's like, because she's like, I know the time we spent together, like, it was the happiest you've been in 10 years, you know? So, don't, like, I help bring out some of that, like, so you could have some of that normalcy again if you work with me. You know, which is so interesting because Charles is pushed, like, he is swept up in that normalcy and he's kind of being pulled away from that normal life, even though his brother's being pushed towards the normal life because that's all he's ever known. And Charles is being pushed more towards the life, all that he's ever known is the crime and the triad and stuff. And ultimately, he calls Alexis out because it's like, right, you have boxes in your house that had not been unpacked in 3 years. It's like, you know what that says about you? That says that your job is all you have because that's all she focuses on. Like, that's all. We haven't, like, seen her have any friends. All we've seen is her have a work, and her work is everything to her. So when Charles said that, it did cut deep because it is that human thing of, you could say something to yourself 1,000 times, but the moment someone says that thing that you're insecure about, something you've said to yourself over and over again, it makes it even more true and makes it cut even deeper when you hear someone else say it, especially when it's someone you care about. But it also turns out Charles was right not to trust her. She had already set it in motion. Like, we find out she'd already got a warrant. She got an okay from the FBI and the police. Because that was the thing. Charles was like, no. That doesn't make any sense. Why would the feds already be on top of it? That doesn't make any sense considering the fact is that they wouldn't know who Sleepy is yet. Because he'd just be some random Chinese businessman, which we never fully got an answer to that. But I guess the argument is supposed to be, like, Alexis helped Charles out from the very beginning. The whole thing was a honey trap because I'm assuming the person she called last episode probably was the FBI. Like, maybe not. Maybe she called Mark, and Mark eventually got the FBI involved. That's why they're involved, because they knew something on a larger scale. Because she is a deputy DA, so she does have, like, enough juice and pull to probably get the FBI involved, even though they traditionally wouldn't be. Because that was the thing that Charles couldn't understand. It's like, how's the FBI involved? It's only been, like, 4 hours since Sleepy Chan died. There's no way they would have been able to identify him immediately. He would have been here with a fake passport. It would have taken some time. It wouldn't be this fast. That has to be because Alexis had called him in ahead of time. So even before she picked up Charles, she figured this would be the easiest way to get him to open up, make him feel like, hey, I'm by your side with all this. Because I mean, it figures as much, and it kind of coincides with what I was saying about this was always going to go to shit, is that story she told about the note she has. Oh, this little kid, his dad was a terrible person, but apparently he was a fantastic father. So because of the letter from the little kid, she showed leniency on the dude. And the moment he got out, he ended up killing someone else. And it was a reminder for her to not let her emotions get the best of her. And yes, she cares about Charles. Yes, they have history, but she wasn't going to let that get in the way of her doing her job, because this is for the greater good. But is it really about the greater good, or is it just about you getting your case and furthering your career? It's probably a combination of the two, but I do believe because your career is your everything, you define yourself so much by it, that the percentage of it being more about your career is that I'd say it's probably like 40% about, hey, just doing the right thing, 60%, maybe even, skew those numbers even higher, of just being, it's just about your job. And like the further you be, like making a name for yourself, making these cases for yourself so that you can expand your career and stuff like that. But yeah, she, ever since last episode, this was all like the entire thing. It wasn't just coming back and having sex with him. It's like the entire thing was a setup from the beginning. And I thought it was so poetic that after Charles left, they got the tracker going, and what happened, the thing he had put up, I guess it's like, oh, he did a shoddy job, but it's very symbolic that when things went to shit between them, the little shelf he made to hold up all the stuff, including the letter, ended up falling. And she couldn't help but kind of laugh a little bit about it because the irony behind it. But yeah, it's actually really sad that it came down to that. Like I said, I knew it was going to go to shit. I wasn't expecting it to go to shit that quickly and in that particular way. But it's like, yeah, like I said, it's extra sucky. And I think she feels kind of shitty because it's like, yeah, it sucks because Charles called me out on my bullshit, because he was right about the whole thing about all I care about is my job, but also that this entire thing was a honeypot. Because regardless of because that was already set up, like, for the tracker to be on his phone. But you probably would have been like, it would have been better if you would have never been none the wiser about it, but we had our big fight. But it's like, he called you out for something that was right. So it is that thing of like, can you really get pissed at someone for saying something that ultimately is true? But like, would you rather be right or would you rather be in comfort? It kind of ends up being that little bit of a conundrum. So that's where things currently stand with Charles and everything. Let's circle to the other side of the episode where Bruce comes back with Blood Boots and Jing, and you know, his mom's finding out about everything, about like, okay, so what's happened, what's going on, and he tries to tell like what Sleepy Chan had said, and she figured it out before anyone else did. He kept thinking laughter, but because he kept thinking it was LOL, but it's like Lolo is kind of what it is, and it's a shorthand phrase for essentially what means the Rolodex, as we find out is the nickname for Mama Eileen, but their mom. And he's like, interesting. So she went to go see, what's it, Hong, who's played by C.S. Lee. I was like, hey! I was trying to remember. I was like, what's the most recent thing I seen him in? You know, his character from, like, he's one of the dudes from, one of the main characters from Dexter. But I wouldn't say, I was trying to remember what the most recent thing I'd seen him in was. Well, funny enough, it was, oh God, Quantum Leap, this season of Quantum Leap. But also because last year was also the year I watched all of Warrior in preparation for season 3. So I also saw it because he's in episode 5 of season 1. Because episode 5 of that season is one of those standout episodes where it's kind of like a bottle episode, but it's like a great episode. Tangents and all that aside. Because that in itself leads to a longer conversation about Warrior, which is supposed to be coming to Netflix, isn't it? I don't remember if they said a date on when that is. I have to check and see when that's going to happen. I don't know. Once again, fingers crossed, still hoping for another season. But we're talking about the brother-son here and not Warrior necessarily. So, but either way, she gets betrayed by Hong, but she already knew that. The whole thing was to meet with these people, and it turns out they're kind of like this fresh face. I guess it's almost like supposed to be like the next generation of triads, and you know, she's acting like she's so in control of like, oh, I wanted to meet you. Now, the fact of the matter is you're wearing tattoos. You have tattoos that obviously the police will be able to know that you buy. You're such young bucks, the way you act, the way you dress. It's like, oh, like, you know, kind of entering mom mode and kind of tearing them down. You even see some of them in the background because you're talking about their cheat outfits. Like some of them you can see adjusting their clothes and kind of covering up their arms because they're embarrassed. So yeah. So she's like, cool, bring me some better tea. Tea that I would, like, because this tea, I wouldn't even feed it to an animal on the street. But it's like, oh, this is much better. And let's, like, negotiate, all right? You hand me, like, you leave me and my family alone, and my husband back home, like the J Triad will take over Sleepy Chan's operations in Taiwan. You get to keep everything in Los Angeles. We're not trying to mosey over here into the States. So you get to have that. Oh, it's all win-win, but it's like, no, I'm not down for that, because the guy she's communicating with, it's like, if you do that, that means you're going to give us your money and we don't want to spend your money. And this goes back to the point I was making last episode, because Eileen's trying to figure out, what do you want? And they never explain it, but it seems like it's adding more certainty, I guess, to an extent, to my theory last episode, especially once again that phrase of the riddance of evil needs to be thorough, or something like that, right? They are on some like holy mission type of shit. I thought it was just, hey, we're here to wipe out, you know, the J Triad or like, you know, Sleepy Chan. It's like, no, they're gunning for everyone, because that's who Eileen is as the Rolodex. She knows all the names. Whereas, like, once again, the whole operation of the Triad is supposed to be this like thing of secrecy where there's no one knows all the names and faces. People might know like the nicknames, but no one knows real names and associates them with faces. But Eileen does. She has all the information. That's why she is such a key, valuable part of their family's operation. And as we learn later on, when she sits down and talks to Bruce and him and Charles, and she finally explains everything to Bruce, that's how their father was able to run things for so long. It's because she was the ultimate insurance policy, as Charles puts it. Basically, she had a gun to every triad around, but the only way she could work as an insurance policy if no one could find her. So that's why her and Bruce had to leave. But even Bruce was like, well, why didn't Charles get to come? She's like, well, Charles had to stay to protect the family. And that's something I brought up earlier in the season 2. What if it was actually supposed to be the inverse? Like, what if initially Bruce was the one that was supposed to stay, but Charles was the one that was supposed to go, but for whatever reason, whether it was a choice made by Eileen or whether it was made by their father, or maybe it was a choice Charles himself made that maybe he kind of regrets. Maybe he made the decision of, I'm the older son. Like I said, that's why I figured like there could also be a possibility of it was always meant to be this way because Charles the oldest. It falls on him the family responsibilities like you know in the line in a lineage of it all will go to Charles first, and if something happens to him then it would go to Bruce. But so it's either like just being the oldest, or there was a decision made by someone. Like I said, Charles could have just stepped up on his own, or maybe it was like a decision made by one of the parents. I don't know. I'm curious because I feel like they're setting up that story the twist to be like, yeah, their lives could have easily been the other way around, because it really could have been and would have been if things weren't changed maybe last second. So we'll have to wait and see. But because of that, you know, she had to come here and stay hidden, and that allowed their families, like Triad, to grow so powerful because they had like the biggest of all insurance policies. But because she has the names of every Triad, that's where I was bringing up this group. We're now knowing their name is they're the Boxers. So I think at the end of the day, what their plan is to wipe out all the Triads. It's not about money or power. I think these might be people who are victims of the Triad. They were victims of all Triad violence. So it's like we've all been screwed over by the Triad in some shape or form. Maybe our parents have been killed. Maybe, you know, someone close to us was caught up in like blood feuds with other Triads. Maybe some of their family members were in the Triads and they're just trying to wipe the board. Like I said, it feels like it's a holy mission that they're all about. So... and this is also where I think Grace comes into place, because once again she just magically pops up everywhere. Like she just happens to pop up, and like Bruce is like, because I didn't talk about it last episode, but she was asking Bruce like, oh, you seem so different from your family. It feels like she's trying to make a point about that because she's gunning for his family, and it's like, well, you have a disconnect because you know nothing about this. So it is like, oh, you are different from your family. So I think she got close to Bruce. Maybe that's why she hasn't necessarily made, because my biggest question is I'm very suspicious of her, and I get more and more suspicious of Grace every episode. But my big question was, well, why hasn't she made a move against Bruce? And I think that answers the question. She just doesn't want to hurt him because she thinks he has nothing to do with this. He isn't his family. He's outside of all this. His mom, yes, she ran this business. His brother has become the man that he is, and their dad flees to Triad. They are all inseminated into that stuff. They are just, that's them. It's always been a part of them for so long. Yes, Charles was the same, like a little bit older than Bruce, but like Charles has been in this life ever since. Bruce has led a normal life, so I think it's a little bit of I want to separate you from your family because I want to know whether or not you are mixed up in this. But she even said it herself, you seem so different. And then once again, just showing up just when his mom went missing, he's kind of opening up to her a little bit. It's like she's trying to keep him away from all this, but also trying to find out how much he knows. Both in the regards of, well, how involved are you with your family business? Oh, you're not. You seem so different from your family. And also at this point, well, how much do you know after everything went down last episode? I mean, I think at the end of the day, she's probably going to try and do everything she can not to kill Bruce, but she will if she has to, because this is for a greater cause. This is about all the death and destruction that was caused by his family and so many other Triads. Like I said, I believe that is the mission statement behind the Boxers. So I love that they went to go see the aunties. And I love everyone immediately like, oh, hi, Bruce, and you know, everything, you know, it's just and them seeing Jing, and they're like, oh, look at what she's wearing, and kind of wondering if they're dating or whatever, yada yada, so on and so forth. But because they're the gossipers and the information people that they are, they point them towards Hong, which Bruce like got so pissed in that confrontation, accidentally slammed his hand down on one of those things and stabbed it through. And even Jing is like, you impale his hand after asking him once. He's like, I'm sorry, it was an accident. But then the moment he wouldn't give any information, Zing like stabbed his other hand. And he reveals like, oh, the Boxers were these people, like your mom might already be dead. And so, like I said, they're trying to pump Eileen for information, but she doesn't want to give it up because it's too important. Because she also knows, like, if I give you this information, you say you're going to let me go. You're not. You're going to end up killing me. Which I think in the end, well, I'll go ahead and talk about it later because I hope I don't end up forgetting. But she knows, like, the moment I give you this information, I'm dead. And anyone close to me is dead. Like, you're gutting for all of our throats. But sadly, Blood Boots had rolled up to protect her. He was sent to go find Charles, but instead he went to follow her. And it's like, who knows? In the end, it is for the better because he told Jing and Bruce where to find them. And it's like, things, even if she didn't, they wouldn't kill her, yes, but they still would have tortured and hurt her. Which even some of them are like, yo, this is an old woman. Like, because, I mean, out of any culture, I think, any Asian culture in particular, it's like, you can't do that to your elders. Like, it's all about respecting your elders. And it's like, this is an old woman we're doing this to. Like, that's kind of messed up. Like, even some of the people are having, like, you know, because all of them, like, are probably, like, sons, and, nephews to, like, someone older. It's like, oh, they have moms, they have aunties. It's like, we can't be doing this to, like, some old lady. That's extra effed up. But, yeah, it's like, they would have, well, the main dude in particular would have definitely hurt her. So, sadly, Blood Boots ends up dying. And she's like, I can't give them anything. He's like, no, I understand. He's like, at the end of the day, the Sun family will always be my family. And she thanks him for his sacrifice. But she's like, this is too important. There's like so much blood that will be spilled if I give them this information. I'll be signing my family's death warrant in a lot of ways. And they end up killing Blood Boots. I was like, damn, dude. And so the big guns that Bruce was telling Jing about bringing, I was like, do you actually know where to get guns? Where is that? He meant the aunties. Like, they show up, they take some of the guns from people, put food in their hands, and like, what are we supposed to do? We're going to follow them? It's like, you can't do anything. It's like, you were hesitant just to do something to one old lady. Here's a room full of them. Are you really going to do it? Especially you can hear someone like, hey, I know your mother. So it's like, you can't do anything. It's like, geez. Like, it's like the ultimate weapon. But Bruce ended up seeing Blood Boots dead body, and it's just like, damn, dude. And obviously it hit Jing a lot, especially because I think Bruce wants to kind of talk to her because he knows he can't really talk to his mom about it, and just he also knows she's kind of going through it. He offered to talk to her early in the episode when she was like, dude, like my mom, she's like, I talked to my mom, like the only messages between me and my mom is me wishing her like a happy birthday and stuff like that, and her not replying. It's like a parent not replying is kind of like, she's like, basically that's been the messages between me and my mom for like the past 5 years. To say, hey, you want to talk about that? Because that seems like a lot, which that's a lot to unpackage, but still. It's sad that the situation came down to that, and so God, that's such a bummer too, because it's like Blood Boots. I mean, he's a killer. We're talking about triad people, but it's like he was so lovable. He has such a dope personality. They make him so fun and endearing, just so it guts you that much when he ends up dying this episode. But yeah, after explaining everything to Bruce, they ultimately want him to memorize stuff, because it came up like pretty early on in the season that he has a really, really good memory. So she wants him to memorize everything she knows. So like if they capture you and they want to know this information, tell them everything so they'll actually spare your life. Because maybe she knows enough to know, right, these people, maybe they're people of their word, but at least Bruce has nothing to do with this, so they'll be more likely to let him go because they know he has nothing to do with it. But also, as they found out, as the leader, well, the dude that was running things this episode said, hey, I know where the weakness is. It's Bruce. Like, knew her sons were the weaknesses, but especially Bruce because, oh, that kid's not chair leg Charles. But yeah, he's the person she'll bend over backwards for, she'll collapse for. Because also when he mentioned Bruce, she's like, I will hunt you down. There will be nowhere on earth you will be safe. So it's like on multiple occasions showcasing that Bruce is the means to get to you. And she, being as smart as she is, recognizes that. As I was talking about it earlier, like I was saying that she knows that if she gives this information up, they'll kill her, most likely everyone. That's also like, but maybe they will stop with you. They'll most likely go after finishing the job with Charles and Bruce's dad, but also with Charles because they're the ones mixed up. Like I said, maybe Bruce would be spared because he's not involved directly in all of this. Like I said, that's just because she isn't willing to give the information up, but she's willing to have Bruce give it up because she knows he'll be spared at the very least in some capacity. And so I think her life is like, for her, it's like, my life is expendable. It just isn't worth losing my children. I think she makes it seem like it's all about Bruce, but I think Charles does apply too. Like, it's just she's a little more detached, at least seems, towards Charles, just because she knows, hey, he can take care of himself, but Bruce, he can't. But once again, it's like, that's to the detriment of the way you raised him, which, it has its pros and it has its cons. Him not being involved in this may be the thing that kind of keeps him alive, and why they haven't necessarily been gunning for him like the way they have been Charles, but it's also left him severely unprepared for all of this. So it's kind of a catch-22 type of situation. We also catch up a little bit with the TK thing, because even Bruce was like, hey, you think he's okay? She's like, he's going to be fine. And we see him in the back of a trunk. Once again, he was supposed to be human collateral in case everything went to shit. Well, everything went to shit, so what that means for him, I don't know. They have issues with his brother and him, so maybe that's all going to flow into this. So I love that, like, we got that, like, literally 5 seconds with TK, and that's all we got of him in this episode. So I'm curious to see where that ends up taking him. Where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.